6:12 in the morning. The underground security control room beneath the Cross Meridian Hotel held the kind of silence only machines could make, the low hum of server fans, the soft click of a cooling unit cycling on, the faint electric breath of 18 monitors painting the walls in shifting red and amber. It was the silence of a place that had been awake all night without anyone to witness it. The private elevator at the north wall released a soft tone. The steel doors parted. Damian Cross stepped out. Black coat, leather gloves, a fine dust of Detroit rain still clinging to his shoulders from the meeting he had driven through the night to leave. He did not stop to remove either. He crossed the floor with the unhurried, deliberate pace of a man who never needed to announce his arrival, because a room always knew when he entered it. He did not ask what the monitors were showing. He did not look at the screens. He did not give her a single second to open her mouth. She was at the central console, head down on the keyboard, nut brown hair fallen forward across her forearm. Her left hand still rested against the spacebar, as if she had meant to continue typing and had simply forgotten. Around her, the 18 displays scrolled alerts in a slow, steady pulse. Scarlet over amber, amber over scarlet, the color of something burning that no one had come to put out. On the desk beside her, a paper cup of black coffee gone cold, a sealed bottle of water, a granola bar with 2 bites taken out of it, and the wrapper folded back down, as if she had meant to return. Marcus Vale stood a pace behind Damian's right shoulder, gold-rimmed glasses, a tailored gray suit, creased only at the elbow. He leaned in slightly, his voice pitched to carry exactly as far as intended, no further. "I told you, boss. Hiring an outsider was a mistake." She couldn't even stay upright through her first real shift. Damian did not answer him. His eyes darkened, not the darkening of anger, which flares and passes, but something older and more settled. Something that had been waiting a long time for a reason to surface. "Wake her," he said. "Now." A junior guard touched her shoulder. Savannah Rhodes came up from the desk in layers, the way the profoundly sleep-deprived always do, eyes first, then the slow recognition of walls, then the dry, painful return of sound. For 2 full seconds, she did not know where she was. Then she saw the black coat. Then she saw the man inside it, Damian Cross, the man who, 3 weeks earlier, had signed her contract at 6 times the market rate without asking her to negotiate. "Mr. Cross," she straightened, her voice rough from disuse. "I need to talk to you about the core authentication cluster, your badge." 4 words. Flat. Now. If anyone restarts the servers, he did not let her finish. He turned his head a fraction toward the guard at the door. "Escort, miss. Rhodes out of the building. Personal belongings will be forwarded." Behind him, Marcus allowed himself a small, thin smile. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses with one finger and let his gaze drift for less than a second to the main display, where a single packet of traffic was moving through the international queue with a rhythm no one else in the room would have recognized as wrong. Savannah stood. Her knees did not quite hold the first time. She did not beg. She did not explain. She looked at Damian once, for a long time, and he met it without flinching, and neither of them learned anything from the other in that moment that they would not have to pay for later. On her way to the door, she stopped beside a young technician, Eli Park, barely 2 years out of school, still nervous enough to stand when an executive walked past. She spoke low, clear, 6 words only. "Don't restart it. Not anything." Eli swallowed. He nodded, uncertainly. Marcus stepped up and laid a hand on the younger man's shoulder, warm, paternal, the way one quiets a frightened animal. "She's been let go, kid. Her words don't carry any weight now." Only hours later, as the entire financial underbelly of the Cross Syndicate began to fail in layers no one in that room yet knew existed, would Damian understand that the woman he had just fired was the only reason his empire had survived the previous 48 hours? To understand the silence Savannah Rhodes carried out of that control room, one had to understand the silence she had already been carrying for 2 years. She was 27. 2 years earlier, she had been sitting at a different desk, 3rd floor of the Chicago Field Office, Cybercrime Division, FBI. 4 years in, she had a reputation for being the kind of analyst who found the thread no one else saw, and who would not let go of it once she did. Her supervisor had been quietly preparing her name for a lead investigator slot. Then, on a clear afternoon in April, her parents had gotten into their car to drive up to her advanced certification ceremony. They never made it out of Indiana. A commercial truck ran a red light outside Gary. They died instantly. Behind them, in the back seat, Lily, 6 years old, survived with a fractured femur that would take 18 months of physical therapy to correct. Savannah did not return to the bureau. She turned down the field investigator offer without ceremony. Someone had to be there when Lily woke up. The freelance security work paid less, but it let her be home by 6 every night, which was a different kind of salary. She did not know who her client was when she signed the latest contract. The arrangement came through Rebecca Ortiz, a broker whose professionalism ran exactly as deep as her commission. 3 weeks of work. Authentication system upgrade. A hotel chain in Chicago. $180,000. Enough to finish Lily's therapy with a margin left over. She signed. It was only on her first morning at the Cross Meridian, being waved toward a service elevator that descended further than the building's map suggested it should, that she understood what the word hotel was being asked to do. Damian Cross met her on the 47th floor. He did not stand when she entered. "You have 2 choices, Miss Rhodes." His voice was quieter than she had expected. "Work for me and keep what you see to yourself. Or leave now and forget everything you have already seen in this building." She thought of Lily's hip. She took the job. The system she inherited was not a system. It was a sediment. Layers of half-finished work laid down across nearly a decade. 32 shell entities. Hundreds of millions of dollars in authentication traffic each week, routed through relays patched by hand and never properly documented. Marcus Vale was her point of contact, warm on the surface, articulate. He walked her through the architecture with the fluency of a man who enjoyed being the one who knew. She noticed, and only noticed, filed away without conclusion, that he moved briskly past certain branches of the network, offering general gestures where she would have expected specifics. She assumed, reasonably, that a criminal organization might treat confidentiality as habit. She began, quietly, to map the system herself, not out of suspicion, out of standard practice. She never trusted an inherited architecture until she had walked it herself. Damian Cross did not speak to her again after that first meeting. Every instruction came through Marcus. At home that night, Lily looked up from the kitchen floor, where she had been arranging crayons by exact shade. "Savvy. Do you work for good people or bad people?" Savannah sat down beside her. She had decided long ago not to lie to Lily. "I work to keep you safe. That's the only part that matters right now." Lily considered this with the seriousness of someone twice her age. Then she reached under the coffee table and pulled out a small gray stuffed rabbit worn at one ear, missing half a whisker, and placed him carefully into her sister's hands. "Take Mr. Biscuit with you. He'll watch out for you when I can't." Savannah looked at the rabbit for a long moment. Then she slid him down into the bottom of her laptop bag, beneath the cables and the spare drives, where nothing rattled and nothing could be seen. She did not know yet how many times, in the coming weeks, that small gray weight would be the only thing in the bag that still felt like home. 2 days before the morning, she fell asleep at the console. Savannah Rhodes saw something in the authentication stream that stopped her hands on the keyboard. It was small, a cluster of verification requests moving through the international queue with timing that mimicked legitimate internal traffic almost perfectly, but not quite. The spacing between packets was too even, the retry intervals too symmetrical. Real traffic had the texture of human decision. This had the texture of something watching. She pulled the request logs back across 72 hours and read them the way she had once read field reports at the Bureau. The pattern resolved into something worse than a breach attempt. These requests were not trying to overload the system. They were not trying to trigger errors. They were doing the opposite. They were not breaking it. They were learning it. She traced the path backward and found where the watching had started a low-priority authentication relay at the edge of the network. The same branch Marcus had walked her past in her first week with a wave and a general sentence. From that foothold, something had been quietly testing what it could reach, mapping interior routes, establishing patience. She reported it through the standard channel. Marcus arrived at her station within 20 minutes. He listened. He looked at the logs she set in front of him. His face arranged itself into a careful calm. "Are you certain? Mr. Cross has no tolerance for false alarms, Savannah. You're 3 weeks in. Don't make waves yet. Keep watching it. Don't escalate to anyone else. I'll carry it up the chain." She said she understood. What she did not say was that a request to stay silent about a live security event, no matter how reasonably framed, was the kind of thing she had been trained, years earlier, to write down. She did not conclude Marcus was lying. She did not conclude anything. She simply decided not to place the weight of the next 48 hours on the strength of his promise alone. She began working in 2 layers. On the surface, she did as Marcus had asked, monitoring. No escalation, no noise. Underneath, she began to build her own defenses. The architecture fought her. There was no way to take the system offline and clean it. Hundreds of millions of dollars moved through it every week. She had to hold it upright while stitching it from the inside, patching bulkheads on a ship still at sea. For 36 hours, she did not leave the control room. She ate from the vending machine in the stairwell. She washed her face in the staff bathroom near midnight. Twice a day she stepped into the hallway and called home. Nora Hale, the 60-year-old neighbor from down the hall, had Lily. "When are you coming home?" Lily asked. "Soon, Bean. I'm fixing something very big. Is Mr. Biscuit helping?" Savannah smiled into the phone screen. "He's working very hard." On the second night, in the small hours, she found the thing that put cold down the center of her spine. Buried inside the core processing cluster, the attackers had planted a dormant trigger, a sleeping mechanism that would remain invisible under normal operation, but would activate automatically the moment anyone issued a standard system restart. Restarts were routine, used constantly. If anyone executed one without knowing what was waiting, every temporary defense she had built would collapse in the same instant. The back door would open. The authentication core would fall in roughly 7 minutes. She wrote it all down: technical notes, patch annotations, time-stamped log summaries. She saved the folder to sec. Root roads. Handover. On the final page, she wrote one line by hand, larger than the rest, underlined twice. "Do not restart. This is not a performance issue. This is a trap. Call my number first. SR." She intended to go up to the 47th floor at sunrise and put it directly in Damien Cross's hands. Not because she had decided Marcus was the enemy, because the matter was now too serious to pass through any intermediary at all. At 4:47, she lowered her head to the desk. Just for a minute. At 6:12, the private elevator released a soft tone, and the steel doors parted. Damien Cross did not look at the elevator as it carried him back up 47 floors. He did not look at anyone on the way through the executive corridor. He stepped into his office, closed the door behind him with the flat, deliberate motion of a man who did not slam doors because he did not need to, and walked to the sideboard. He poured a whiskey. No ice. It was 6:30 in the morning, and he did not care. He stood at the window with the glass untouched in his hand and looked out across the gray face of Lake Michigan. 3 years earlier, his younger brother Evan, 24 years old, an aspiring architect who had been pulled into the family business because Damien had wanted someone in the room he could trust, had died on the concrete floor of a warehouse in Gary, Indiana. A federal raid, a back door he had almost reached. The raid had succeeded because, the night before, the man watching the early warning array, a low-level enforcer named Jonah Briggs, had fallen asleep at his post. For 4 minutes, the perimeter had been blind. 4 minutes had been enough for a SWAT team to move into position without tripping a single sensor. By the time anyone inside the warehouse understood what was happening, Evan was already running, and the shooter was already aiming. Marcus Vale had conducted the internal review. His conclusion, filed in a neat 3-page document Damien still kept in the lower drawer of his desk, had been that Briggs had pulled a long shift and simply lost consciousness. No evidence of betrayal. No second party. What Damien did not know, what no one in the Cross Syndicate knew, was that Marcus had paid Briggs to sleep. That 2 weeks later, when Briggs's car had gone off a bridge near Hammond, Marcus had paid for that as well. That the death of Evan Cross had been Marcus's entrance payment to a different family, the first deposit on a long account owed to Silas Blackwood. Damien only knew what had happened on the surface. And on the surface, a man had slept, and his brother had died. He had made himself a rule after the funeral, and he had not broken it in 3 years. Any man found asleep at a post was gone the same hour. No discussion, no appeal. For Damien, it had stopped being a policy. It had become a debt. He stood at the window with the phone in his hand. He wanted to call downstairs. He wanted to ask someone to pull the last 72 hours of access logs for Savannah Rhodes' station. But if he lifted the rule once, the organization would see him lift it. Once that happened, he would spend the rest of his life being tested. He set the phone down. He did not drink the whiskey. Marcus came in without knocking. He set a slim folder on the desk. System status after Miss Rhodes' departure. Everything is stable. I'll oversee the floor personally until we have a replacement. Damien did not look at the folder. How long to bring someone in? I have 3 candidates. 48 hours. Damien nodded. Something very small. Somewhere behind his ribs, the part of him that had watched Savannah's mouth form the phrase core authentication cluster before he cut her off, did not agree with the nod. He pushed the feeling down. There was no room in this work for sentiment. At 12:47 in the afternoon, on the floor he had walked out of 6 hours earlier, a supervisor named Hutchins stood over the central console and watched the transaction queue begin to lag. Seconds were stretching into fractions that would, in a minute or two, become real money. Restart the cluster. Eli Park did not move at first. His hand stayed on the edge of the desk. Miss, Rhodes said not to. She's fired. Park. Her words are worth nothing now. In the doorway, Marcus Vale watched the exchange without interrupting. He allowed himself a very small smile and said, gently, to no one in particular, "Follow protocol, boys." The command executed at 12:47 and 11 seconds. For the first 30 seconds, everything looked better than it had all morning. Then hell opened its door. At 12:48, the queue cleared. Hutchins exhaled. For 3 minutes, the control room looked like a room that had solved a problem. Transactions moved again. The supervisor's shoulders came down from his ears. Somewhere near the coffee station, a junior engineer laughed at something. At 12:51, the authentication tokens began to desynchronize. It was not dramatic. The main display simply started returning a status it had not returned all week uncommitted, next to transactions that seconds earlier had been processing normally. 1 line at first, then 4, then 17. At 12:54, the isolation layer's Savannah Rhodes had spent 2 sleepless nights stitching into the system fell, all at once, the way a row of interior doors falls when the frame they share is pulled loose. The attacker did not knock. The attacker walked in through a corridor that had, 5 minutes earlier, been a wall. At 12:58, 3 wire transfers totaling $14 million moved out of cross-syndicate shell accounts in 3 different banks and resolved into destinations in Cyprus and Latvia that no one in the room recognized. At 1:03, the alert system began to scream. The floor went red. "Get Vale." Hutchins's face had lost its color in a single motion. "Get Vale now." Marcus came through the door at a pace carefully calibrated to look like a man responding to news rather than a man arriving for his cue. He put his hands on the central console. He asked for status. He issued an order for a rollback. The rollback failed. The system had no snapshot recent enough to anchor to. The defensive geometry Savannah had built during those 48 hours had never been committed to formal documentation. It had existed only inside her head and inside the live configuration, and the restart had wiped the configuration clean. Eli Park's hands were shaking. He opened a folder on a secondary screen that no one else had thought to check root roads, handover, and scrolled to the final page. He read the last line aloud, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Do not restart. This is a trap. Call my number first." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that belongs to a room that has just understood something it cannot take back. One by one, the engineers on the floor turned their heads toward Hutchins. Marcus cut across it. "She's been fired. We don't need her. I'll handle this." But Marcus, for all that he had been the one to plant the back door, had never understood what Savannah had built around it in the weeks since. He knew how to open the lock. He did not know how to close it once someone else had changed the mechanism. Damian Cross walked into the control room 10 minutes later. His face had gone to stone. Damage. 14 million and climbing. Hutchins's voice cracked on the second syllable. Roughly 2 million a minute. Who can stop it? The room said nothing. Eli Park raised his hand, trembling. "Only Miss Rhodes, sir. She's the only one who understands the architecture she built." Damian looked at Marcus. Marcus moved quickly. "Sir, I can handle this. I just need a little more time." "There is no more time." Damian crossed to the console Eli had left open. He read the folder. He read the warning. He read the final line with Savannah's personal number beneath it. The longer he read, the harder his jaw set. Every sentence in the document made the same quiet argument. She had not been patching a bug for 48 hours. She had been holding the door against an intrusion no one else had seen. He picked up his phone and called the number at the bottom of the page. It rang 3 times. No one answered. Behind him, Marcus slid his own phone from his jacket pocket and sent a short message to a contact saved under no name at all. "She is no longer in the system. Execute Plan B." The message routed, by way of 2 intermediate servers, to Silas Blackwood. Damian turned to Anton, his driver, standing by the door. "Get the car. Rhodes' home address. Now." Mr. Cross, Marcus began. "She may be dangerous. Let me send a team. She isn't dangerous." Damian did not look at him. "I am. Move." He walked to the elevator. The doors closed on Marcus still standing there, his eyes darker than the room around him. Savannah Rhodes did not remember the Uber ride home. She remembered the driver asking whether she preferred the expressway or the lakeshore, and she remembered saying neither word. The rest of the trip was a blank stretch of gray window and the dull, unreasonable sound of her own pulse in her ears. Somewhere past the loop, she tried Rebecca Ortiz's number. It rang through to voicemail. She tried again 5 minutes later. Voicemail. She did not leave one. The Lakeview apartment was small and kept clean because Savannah Rhodes had been raised not to let the inside of a home go loose just because the outside of a life had. Lily came off the couch in a run when the door opened and wrapped her arms around her sister's waist. Nora Hale stood up from the kitchen chair with the careful slowness of a woman in her 60s, took one look at Savannah's face, and did not ask any questions. "There's soup in the fridge, honey. I'll come back at 6. Savannah thanked her. She showered without turning the water hot. She sat on the edge of the sofa to put her head down for a minute. Lily climbed up beside her and arranged a blanket across her legs with the solemnity of someone performing a small, important ritual. 40 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Savannah came up through the last membrane of sleep, half convinced it was Nora coming back. She crossed the living room with Lily's blanket still trailing from one shoulder and put her eye to the peephole. 2 men, dark coats. The one in front was broad-shouldered, mid-40s, his smile already arranged for the door to open. She opened it one chain width. "Miss Rhodes." The accent was heavy, somewhere between Romanian and something further east. "I am Victor Petrescu. I represent a private investment fund. We know you were treated very unfairly this morning. A specialist of your caliber, it should not have happened that way." She tried to close the door. His boot came forward against the frame. "A small offer. $500,000. You answer a few questions about the architecture you have just been working on. 3 weeks. Nothing complicated. I signed an NDA. Get off my property." "An NDA with a criminal organization is not an NDA, Miss Rhodes. Be realistic." From the hallway behind her, Lily's voice thin, curious. "Savvy? Who is it?" Victor's brow tightened for half a second. He murmured something low to his partner in a language Savannah recognized as Romani. "There's a child." She used the half-second he had given her. She slammed the door, threw both deadbolts, grabbed Lily by the hand, and moved. The bathroom was the only interior room in the apartment with a locking door, a small window too high for a man to fit through, and a reinforced frame she had installed herself 6 months after the funeral. Old bureau habit. She had never told Lily what it was for. Lily had never asked. Outside, the knocking came again. Politely at first, then not. The partner's voice carried through the wood. "A phone call. Brief." She refused. "Go to option 2. Savannah heard the soft, precise sound of a pick working the bolts. She pulled Lily against her chest. The little girl was shaking, but she was not crying. After a moment, she whispered into Savannah's collarbone. "Savvy, where's Mr. Biscuit?" Savannah's mind went past the question and found the laptop bag. The bag she had dropped on the sofa when she came in. The front door splintered. 2 gunshots. Clean. Close together. Then nothing. Footsteps. Heavier than the ones that had come before. A low voice, calling through the apartment. "Miss Rhodes, it's Cross." She unlocked the bathroom door slowly. Damien stood in the center of the living room. His black coat was marked with blood that did not belong to him. A Sig Sauer with a suppressor still in his right hand. 2 men lay near the entry. One of them was still making a sound. Damien kicked the weapon away from his reach without looking down. His eyes found Savannah. Then they dropped to Lily, who had come out from behind her sister and was holding onto the back of Savannah's thigh with both hands. Something moved across Damien's face. It was very brief. He did not have a name for it. He put it away. "Did you come for the money?" Savannah said. "Or for me? You need to come with me. Now." "It isn't for the money." Somewhere in the distance, over the lake, a police siren began to rise. Lily took a step out from behind her sister. She looked up at the tall man in the bloody coat and tugged once at the hem of his sleeve. "Mister, are you a good person or a bad person?" Damien did not answer her. He did not know how. The vehicle waiting at the alley behind the apartment building was an unmarked black SUV with plates that had never been registered to anyone by that name. Anton was already in the driver's seat, Damien's man for 15 years, a former Army Ranger who spoke when he needed to, and not when he didn't. He took one glance at the blood on Damien's coat, nodded once, and put the car in gear. Lily sat in the middle of the back seat with Mr. Biscuit pressed against her chest. Savannah had thought to grab the laptop bag on the way out. One strap hooked over her shoulder in the same motion she had used to lift her sister off the bathroom floor, and the rabbit had come with it. Lily had retrieved him from the canvas without being asked. Savannah did not look at Damien when she spoke. Her voice was flat. Her hands, resting on her knees, had begun to shake now that there was nothing to do with them. "You fired me this morning. Why are you here now?" "Because you were right. And I was wrong." He did not turn toward her when he said it. He watched the road. "The system's been compromised. 14 million out. Climbing." She closed her eyes. She drew one full breath in, held it, let it go. When she opened them again, her hands had steadied. Get me to a machine with root access. Now. From between them, Lily tilted her head up. Savvy. Is this your boss? My old boss, Bean. Lily turned to face Damien fully. She studied him the way a small, serious person studies something that may or may not be what it claims to be. Then she asked, without any trace of cruelty and without any softening either, Mister, are you nice to my sister? Damien Cross had been asked a great many things in his life, by men far more dangerous than a 6-year-old in mismatched socks, and he had always known how to answer. He did not know how to answer this. I'm trying, he said carefully. Lily considered him. Her verdict was delivered with the finality of a judge who does not require a second opinion. Trying isn't enough. You have to actually do it. Savannah made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost not. Damien looked at the child a fraction longer than he had meant to. The penthouse was on the 38th floor of a Gold Coast tower owned by a shell company 3 removes from anything that bore his name. Floor-to-ceiling glass. A long view of the lake. Damien showed Lily to the guest bedroom furthest from the entry. She walked a slow, considered loop of the room, stopped at the window, and delivered her second ruling of the evening. I like it here, but I'm still mad at you for firing my sister. You have every right. I'm going to stay mad until you say sorry properly. All right. In the adjoining office, Damien set a high-spec workstation in front of Savannah and authenticated it to root against the full cross network. She sat. She opened a terminal. Her fingers moved. Who gave the restart order? Supervisor Hutchins. Marcus Vale was present and agreed. She stopped typing, only for a breath. Then she began again. She did not say anything aloud. Inside her head, a small notation attached itself to a name. Vale was there. Vale let it through. It was the first time the suspicion had assumed any shape at all, and she was not willing to give it more shape than that without evidence. She had been trained, years ago, not to name the wrong man. She was not going to name the wrong man now. What are you thinking? Damien said. That I need to stop the bleeding first. Everything else comes after. Do it. She glanced up at him once. Don't trust anyone until I tell you who to trust, including whoever you think you trust most. He hesitated. It was 1 second, maybe less. Then he nodded. All right. He crossed to the doorway of the guest room and stood looking through the glass. Lily had arranged Mr. Biscuit on the pillow and was speaking to him earnestly in the tone children reserve for friends who are older and wiser than they are. Something small and unfamiliar moved in Damien's chest, a feeling he had not allowed himself since Evan and settled there without asking his permission. For 3 hours she did not speak except to give instructions. She did not eat. At some point Damien placed an espresso cup beside her right hand without comment. She registered it in her peripheral vision and did not look up, and only after her fingers found the handle on their own did she notice that it had been pulled correctly, the crema thick and unbroken, the cup warmed before the water went through. She had not expected a man in a black coat, with someone else's blood on the sleeve, to know how to pull an espresso. She did not know what to do with the fact that he did, so she did nothing with it, and drank. Damien had assembled a small remote team over an encrypted channel. She had given him 3 names. 2 she did not know and did not trust yet. The third was Eli Park, the only person from the control floor who had tried to say the right thing at the right time. She handed him the coordination role. She worked down her list in order. Isolate the anomalous outbound connections. Route them into a controlled observation sink rather than severing them outright, so the attacker would not know the watching had begun. Build a mirror pathway to trace where the 14 million had gone. Construct a manual failover for the highest value transaction queue. Then, 23 specific configuration changes to the authentication layer, a door-by-door rekeying of the whole floor. It was during the 17th of those 23 changes that she noticed something she did not mention aloud. The back door, when she finally cornered it, carried a digital fingerprint, the signature of an internal SSH key. She copied the fingerprint into a private file on her workstation. She did not compare it to anything. It was raw data, nothing more. Damien stood behind her for most of 3 hours. He did not speak. He did not intervene. At one point, she felt him take a phone call in the next room in a voice too low to follow. He came back and did not tell her what it had been about. When the bleeding finally stopped, she leaned back in the chair and felt, for the first time since dawn, the shape of her own exhaustion. Damien set a glass of water in front of her. Drink. She drank. Why did you come straight home? He asked, instead of resting somewhere. Because I didn't trust you not to send someone after me. I needed to be near Lily before you got there. A silence. He did not look offended. He looked as if he had expected the answer. I would never have done that. You fired me before I finished a sentence. I had no reason to believe anything you told me. He sat down in the chair across from her. The lamplight caught the line of his jaw. You're right. But I can tell you why I reacted the way I did, if you want to hear it. She nodded. He told her about Evan, 24 years old, should have been an architect, about the warehouse in Gary, about a man named Briggs who had fallen asleep at a monitoring post for 4 minutes, and the 4 minutes that had been enough, about his own rule, made at the funeral, and never yet bent. I promised myself after, anyone asleep at a post, no discussion, no explanation. That was how I kept my word to him. Savannah sat with it. She understood, suddenly, that what she had taken for cruelty in the control room that morning had been grief wearing the shape of discipline. It did not absolve him. It explained him, and the explanation was not nothing. So, what do you mean to do with me? He turned toward her. I want to ask you to stay. Formally, not through Rebecca, not through anyone, directly to me. You know I can refuse. I know. I have a sister. I can't live as a criminal. Lily doesn't deserve that life. I won't put you on the front line. You work remotely. You have security. Lily has 24-hour protection. And when the system is stable, I'll help you build a legitimate security company with my stake held silently. You walk away from me whenever you want. She did not answer right away. She looked through the glass panel toward the guest room, where Lily had fallen asleep with Mr. Biscuit tucked beneath her chin. The reason she would say yes was not the money, and it was not Damien. It was the 2 dead men in her living room. It was the phrase, execute Plan B. It was the clean arithmetic of the situation. Blackwood would not stop coming. If Damien fell, Blackwood would follow her and Lily to the end of the line. She was only safe as long as Damien was still standing. I'll stay, but on conditions. Damien's voice was quiet. Tell me. Savannah pulled a legal pad from the stack on the corner of the desk. She wrote out 3 lines, evenly spaced. She turned the pad and slid it across to him. 1. Lily never learns what Cross Syndicate actually does. As far as she knows, you are a hotel developer. Nothing else. 2. No violence in front of me or in front of her. If something has to be handled, you handle it somewhere I will never see it. 3. I can leave at any time with 1 week's notice. No consequences. No surveillance. Not even from a distance. Damien read each line twice. He did not try to negotiate a word. He took the pen from her hand, uncapped it, and signed at the bottom. His signature was small and clean, more like a lawyer's than a man whose other hand had held a suppressor 6 hours ago. She noticed it. She did not mention it. I have one condition of my own. Name it. When you find anything that could put you or Lily at risk, you come to me. You do not handle it yourself. You do not stay silent. She looked at him for a long moment. It was the condition of a man who had lost his brother because no one had spoken to him in time. Agreed. On the northern edge of the city, Marcus Vale sat behind the wheel of a parked sedan with the engine off. Victor Petrescu's partner had been lucid enough, before the Chicago police had arrived, to make one brief call from a burner under the driver's seat of the car across the street. 2 dead. 1 in custody. Savannah Rhodes taken alive by Cross. Marcus did not curse. He did not panic. He understood, with the clarity of a man who had lived most of a decade on a timeline he did not control, that the window was closing on him now not because Savannah Rhodes had named him, but because any analyst of her caliber, given enough time inside the system, would eventually find the fingerprint he had left on the door. He dialed a satellite number from a second handset and waited. Status. She's back in. Cross took her personally. You said she was a good back door. Now she's the front door. I can do my part. I need time. You have 24 hours. After that, you either die a hero on Cross's side or you run to me like a coward. Either way, Doy, she is mine to resolve. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the silence of his own car for a long moment. Then he opened a different application on the same device. A small green dot was moving across a map of the Gold Coast, a GPS tracker he had slipped under the wheel well of Damien's SUV 6 months earlier, for exactly the kind of night where the rules might change. He did not move against them directly. Not yet. He opened a remote access panel to the Gold Coast Tower's monitoring system, a panel he had requested 3 years earlier under a vendor audit and had quietly retained. He began to seed small faults. A 10-second black frame every 4th minute in the elevator camera feed. An intermittent dropout in the hallway sensor log. The kind of degradation a busy security desk would write off as routine, and that would become, later, a corridor. Back on the 38th floor, Lily had fallen asleep across the guest bed, with one arm around Mr. Biscuit and one sock missing. Savannah stood at the window of the main room. Her hands, resting on the glass, had finally stopped shaking, but only because there was nothing left in them to shake. Damien came to stand beside her. Not too close. You haven't slept in 3 days. It's 4. The room beside Lily's is yours. Sleep. Anton will be outside the door. Do you trust your men? I trust Anton. The rest I'm reassessing. She turned toward the hallway, then stopped at the doorway. Mr. Cross. Damien. Damien. I never got an apology this morning. He looked at her. It was not the look of an employer, or a boss, or a man weighing a subordinate. It was the look of a man saying the thing he had come to the end of being able to not say. I am sorry, Savannah. I was wrong. I almost lost everything because I was too proud to listen. If you give me a chance, I won't do it again. She nodded once. She did not speak. She walked into the room beside her sisters and closed the door. Damien stood alone in the living room for a long time. Through the glass, he watched the small shape of Lily curled around the gray rabbit, rising and falling with her breathing. For the first time since Evan, he understood that he had something to lose again. 3 days passed inside the penthouse. Savannah built a command center out of the office, 3 monitors arranged in a shallow arc, 3 laptops, a small backup server tucked under the desk. She ran the cleanup entirely remotely. She did not set foot back inside the cross meridian. She did not need to. Every pathway she needed was now a glass rectangle she could close with a keystroke. Damien left each morning before 8. He returned earlier than his routine warranted. He did not offer an explanation for it, and Savannah did not ask. Lily did not go to school. Savannah would not risk it. Instead, she taught her at the dining table, with workbooks she had ordered, and a rotation of lessons that made very little sense to an outsider until one listened carefully. Math, reading, and a third subject Lily simply called looking, which was, beneath its kind name, the first stage of a security analyst's mind. On the second evening, Damien sat across the counter with a cup of coffee and watched his temporary household in progress. What's different in this room today, Bean? Lily scanned the space with the seriousness of a field officer. She pointed. The right lamp got dusted today. It wasn't dusted yesterday. Good. When you see something new in a place that feels familiar, you stop, and you ask why. Later, after Lily had gone to arrange Mr. Biscuit for bed, Damien spoke quietly from the other side of the counter. You're training her. I'm giving her tools. The world isn't safe for a 6-year-old who can't see. He was silent for a moment. You think about that world because you've seen it. FBI, 4 years, Cybercrime Division. I saw what people do to each other when they think no one is watching. Why did you leave? She told him about her parents. The truck. The intersection outside Gary. Lily in the back seat. It was the first time she had told a stranger any of it. Damien did not interrupt. When she finished, he said only, I understand. No, she said. You don't. My brother, 24. I didn't get him out of that warehouse in time. He died on the concrete floor with a bullet through the chest. I was 10 minutes late. She looked at him. For a moment she was not looking at the man in the black coat who had put his Sig Sauer on her sofa 3 days earlier. She was looking at the person who lived underneath it. I'm sorry. So am I. Lily came running in at the worst possible moment, and the best possible one. Holding a sheet of drawing paper in both hands, she laid it reverently on the counter between them. A tall man, a woman with yellow hair, a small girl, a gray rabbit, all 4 in a line, holding hands. Mr. Cross, this is you. That's Savvy. That's me. And this is Mr. Biscuit. We're a team. Damien looked at the drawing for a long time. He did not say anything. Savannah did not say anything either, but her heart, without her permission, moved half a beat faster. He stood. I'll hang it in my office. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Really? She ran off to find more paper, the seriousness of her commission lending her small steps weight. You don't have to do that, Savannah said softly. I want to. A long quiet settled between them. Damien looked at her over the rim of his cup. Savannah, I have a question. You don't have to answer now. Ask. If there were no Blackwood, no trap in the system, no cross syndicate, would you consider me as a man? She did not answer right away. She looked at him the way she had looked at the drawing. I don't know yet, but I'm not saying no. All right. That night, a motion sensor in the hallway outside the penthouse tripped at 3 minutes past 1 in the morning. Anton was on his feet and at the door before the second pulse registered. The corridor was empty. No footsteps. No figure on the stairwell camera. On the tile outside the door, A shallow X had been scored into the floor with the tip of a knife. A single sheet of paper sat folded in the center of it. Anton opened it with a gloved hand. 4 words, hand-printed in block capitals. You are never safe. By 7 the next morning, Damien had assembled Anton and 2 of his most trusted men in the penthouse office. The hallway footage was on the main monitor. A figure in a building maintenance jumpsuit, the kind worn by the HVAC contractors who came through the tower on a rotating schedule, walked the corridor at 1:03. The cap was pulled low, the hands were gloved. The face never turned toward any of the 3 cameras he must have known were there. He did not know them all. He had missed the secondary pinhole in the fire alarm housing, which caught him in profile for less than a second as he stepped past the elevator. It was not enough to see a face. It was, for a person trained to watch, enough to see a walk. Do you recognize anyone? Damien asked. Savannah rewound the clip and played it through a second time at half speed. She did not answer immediately. Her eyes tracked the figure's right shoulder, the small, habitual lift every person made when they reached a threshold, as unique as a voice. Not yet. There's something in the gate, but I don't want to say it out loud before I can prove it. You're careful. I was trained at the Bureau. Naming the wrong man is how innocent people get shot and guilty ones walk free. I'm not doing it on a feeling. She spent the next 20 minutes pulling the cross-syndicate internal camera archives, years of executive floor footage, elevator feeds, parking garage recordings, and feeding them into a gate analysis comparison she had brought over from her old Bureau toolkit. It would run in the background, 200 profiles to process, 24 to 48 hours, realistically, before it produced a ranked match list. Damien did not wait for the software. He doubled security on every perimeter, the lobby, the garage, the stairwell access points, and had Anton personally vet the rotation. By the afternoon, Lily had been inside for almost a week. She had not complained, which was worse than complaining. Savannah knew the look of a child who had started to fold her world smaller to fit the room she had been given. She needs to be outside, Savannah said. Even an hour. Damien picked an ice cream shop on Navy Pier for a reason, neither of them named. Aloud, it was loud, visible, surrounded by families, and covered by harbor police. 3 of his men were already there in plainclothes by the time Anton pulled the SUV to the curb. Lily ordered strawberry. She sat on a bench with Mr. Biscuit on her lap and explained, with the full gravity of someone relaying confidential intelligence, that Mr. Biscuit had been in training lately to become a junior bodyguard, and was making excellent progress. Damien surprised all of them, himself perhaps most of all, by telling her a story. It was about a small rabbit named Pip, who had once saved a giant from a wolf. It was not his story. His mother had told it to him when he was 6, in a kitchen he had not thought about in nearly 30 years. The words came back cleaner than he expected. Savannah watched him from the next bench over. It was the first time she had seen Damien Cross as something other than a boss, and something other than a man who carried a gun. On the drive back, Lily fell asleep against the window with her seatbelt twisted. Savannah sat in the front with Damien. My mother died when I was 8. My father taught me the work. He died when I was 28. I'm 37 and I've buried all of them. You haven't buried all of them. Evan is still in you. You don't understand. I do. My parents are still in me. Not as weight, as reason. He looked at her for a long time. Long enough that Anton, from the rear view, politely turned his eyes away. They pulled into the private garage beneath the penthouse. The moment the SUV's door opened, Anton raised one hand, flat, still. On the carpeted runner leading from the parking bay to the elevator, a faint dusting of footprints. Size 11, not one of theirs. Damien drew his weapon before his foot touched the concrete. He put Savannah and Lily behind him and behind Anton. The living room was empty. The penthouse was empty. Every room. On the coffee table in the center of the main room, a prepaid burner phone had been placed face up. It began to ring the moment Damien crossed into the space. He picked it up. The voice on the other end was modulated low, flat, gender scrubbed through commercial software. Pretty Miss Rhodes, pretty little sister. Both of them could disappear inside a week. Return the network to us, and we might reconsider. This is your last warning, Mr. Cross. A pause. You are the one who handed her to us. Don't forget that. The line died. Damien stood looking at the phone in his hand. Savannah had already lifted Lily into her arms, the little girl still half asleep, Mr. Biscuit crushed between them. Damien turned to Anton. Call everyone. We're moving. Now. The property in Wisconsin was 3 hours north of Chicago by the back roads Anton knew, past 2 county lines and the last gas station that kept a landline. 40 acres held inside a perimeter fence that did not look like a fence at all. recorded under a trust with a name that belonged to no one. It had once been Damien's father's weekend place, a timber house with a fieldstone hearth, a hay barn across the yard, a small pond that reflected the sky in a way the city never did. Lily stepped out of the SUV and went still with the kind of astonishment only a city child produces the first time she sees a horizon that has not been drawn by buildings. Within 20 minutes, she had named a neighboring dairy cow Miss Buttercup and had established, with the formality of a new diplomatic relationship, that Miss Buttercup was Mr. Biscuit's first country friend. Savannah rebuilt her command center in a second-floor room that faced the tree line. Satellite uplink, 3 monitors, a cold storage backup in a steel case under the desk. Damien brought in 6 men from Anton's innermost rotation and did not explain their presence to anyone but Lily, who was told they were farm staff and who believed it for roughly 4 hours. That night, after Lily had been tucked in with the rabbit against her cheek, Savannah and Damien sat on the porch. The air smelled of cut hay and cold water. The sky was absurd with stars. I'd forgotten what a sky looks like without city light. I haven't been here since Evan was alive. We used to come up every summer. Tell me about your brother. He did. For the first time aloud to anyone but himself, he told her about Evan, about a boy who had been better at drawing than he had ever been at anything, who should have become an architect, and who had been pulled into the family work because Damien had needed someone in the room he could trust. I couldn't protect him. I promised myself I would never let that happen again to anyone who belonged to me. We don't belong to you, Damien. I know. I'll protect you anyway. A long quiet settled between them, the kind that is not empty. You're cold. He took off his coat and laid it over her shoulders. She did not refuse it. That night, walking back through the house to her room, Savannah understood something she did not want to say aloud yet. She had begun to feel Damien not as a boss, but as a man whose wounds fit against the shape of her own. Before dawn, while he was still asleep, she went back to the workstation. The gate analysis run had completed at 4:11 a.m. She opened the output with her second cup of coffee still in her left hand. The top match returned at 87% confidence. Marcus Vale. She did not react. She did not let herself react yet. She pulled up the digital fingerprint she had saved from the back door on the night she had stopped the bleeding and ran it against the internal SSH key vault of the Cross Syndicate architecture. The hash was identical. One more check. She pulled the access logs for that key going backward as far as the system retained them. The first activation had occurred 3 months earlier, weeks before her own contract had been signed, before Rebecca Ortiz had even contacted her. She sat with her hands on the desk for a long time. The room was still dark. Through the window, the first faint gray was starting to come up behind the barn. She had evidence now. Not a theory, not a feeling. Evidence, time-stamped and reproducible, that the man who had walked her through the architecture of Damien Cross's organization had been a spy in it for longer than she had been alive to that world. Now she had to say it to him, not as suspicion, as fact. That afternoon, Damien found a small training bow in his father's storage and set Lily up at a straw target by the barn. If I hit it, Mr. Cross, you have to draw a picture with me. I can't draw. I'll teach you. Like Savvy taught me to read. He smiled. A real one. The first Savannah had seen on him since she had met him. She stood on the porch with her coffee and watched, and her chest did that small, aching thing that is not pain, it is a door opening that you do not know how to close. On the second night at the farm, the perimeter sensors in the North Woods triggered a soft alarm on Anton's tablet at 11:47 p.m. A small drone, dark-painted, quadrotor, commercial modified, flying a slow grid at treetop height. Anton took it down with a directional EMP gun from the porch without raising his voice. The drone fell into the wet grass. Inside, a high-resolution camera and a GPS transmitter that was, at the moment of impact, still live-streaming to somewhere. They found us, Damien said. Savannah looked at him. She knew it was time. Damien, I need to tell you something about Marcus Vale. I have evidence. At sunrise, she laid it out for him on the workstation desk, the fingerprint match, the access log stretching backward to a date 3 months before her own contract had been signed, the gate analysis output, time-coded against the hallway footage from the Gold Coast. She did not embellish any of it. She presented it the way she had been trained to present findings years ago, cleanly, numerically, without effect. Damien read it in silence. His face did not move. But when he set the last page down, his hand, for the first time since she had known him, was not entirely steady. 3 months. Maybe longer. That's only as far back as the system retains. I had dinner with him every Sunday for 3 years. She did not answer. She looked out the window at the barn, where the first light was reaching the ridge of the roof. The night Evan died, Briggs fell asleep. Marcus ran the review. Marcus concluded exhaustion. I believed him. She understood it fully then. You fired me that morning because you thought I was the same kind of person. He nodded. He did not look at her. So Marcus knew exactly how to make you fire me, she said, gently. He used your wound. His jaw locked. The pen on the desk bent slightly under the pressure of his hand before he remembered he was holding it. I'm taking him today. No, Savannah, if you take him now. Blackwood knows the plan broke open and responds harder. Keep him in the dark. Let him believe he's still invisible. We use him, while you and Lily are the bait, while you and I control the tempo. He hesitated for a long moment. Then, against everything in him that wanted to drive back to Chicago and put a bullet through a chair at a dinner table, he nodded once. She spent the next 18 hours at the workstation. She took control of the downed drone, rebuilt its flight control firmware, spoofed its positioning so that whoever was reading the transmission believed the farm sat 20 miles southwest of its actual coordinates in an abandoned grain storage facility in Greene County. A real building. Empty. Perfect. Damien and Anton placed 12 men around that grain facility by the following dusk. At first light on the third morning, a 6-person Blackwood team arrived in 2 vehicles. Victor Petrescu, limping still from the Lakeview apartment, was at the front of them. Marcus was not. The engagement lasted less than 90 seconds. 2 of the Blackwood men died in the open. 4 surrendered. Victor took a round through the thigh and was dragged into the back of a van before he could reach his own weapon. Damien conducted the interrogation in a separate location. Savannah, by the terms she had written on the legal pad, was not in the room. Anton relayed updates on an encrypted channel. After 2 hours, Victor broke. He gave up the relocation intelligence Marcus had passed to Silas. He gave up the Milwaukee safe house. And he gave up one thing more. Marcus had not come to the grain facility because he was running a side errand, a private initiative Silas did not know about. That side errand was Lily. Marcus had decided, apparently on his own, to take the child, a living asset to bring to Blackwood a credential, proof of usefulness, a way to redeem his collapsing position. Damien called Savannah on a direct line the instant Anton relayed the name. He's coming to the farm. The real farm. Blackwood doesn't know the real location. Marcus does. Savannah was in the hay barn with Lily at that moment, counting chicken coops with her. She did not let her voice change. Understood. Anton, at the farm with 3 of the perimeter men, received the alert and tightened the rotations. But Marcus was already on the property. He had come in along an old deer path through the northern tree line that none of Anton's men had mapped a trail Damien's father had shown Marcus 20 years earlier, when Marcus had first come into the organization. The power cut at 9:46 a.m. Every light on the property went out at once. The perimeter alarms, routed through the main house, went dead with them. Savannah's FBI reflexes fired a full second before her conscious mind caught up. She put a hand flat on Lily's back and pushed her down behind a stacked bale of hay. She drew the Glock 19 Damien had given her and which she had put 2 days of live practice into and took a low position with her shoulder against the bale. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Wood groaning softly under a weight that was trying to be silent. A voice she knew. Miss Rhodes. You don't belong to us anymore, do you? Vale. Did you kill Evan? A silence. Then flat. I created the conditions. Briggs did it. I only paid. Behind the bale, Lily's voice. Very small. Savvy? Marcus moved toward the sound. Savannah fired. Missed. Marcus fired back. A round grazed the outside of her left arm. She fell sideways against the bale and could not bring the Glock up before he was past her. He hauled Lily up by one arm and put the barrel against her temple. A single shot. Marcus staggered. A neat hole opened between his eyebrows. He dropped without ever completing the step he had been taking. Anton stood at the rail of the loft above, the rifle still smoking. Savannah crossed the floor in 3 strides and pulled Lily into her chest. Lily had not cried once through the apartment, or the penthouse, or the drones in the trees. She cried now. I was so scared, Savvy. I'm here. I'm staying right here. Damien reached the farm an hour later. He did not go through the house. He crossed the yard in a straight line and went into the barn at a run. Savannah was sitting on a pile of loose hay with her back against a post. She had tied a strip torn from the hem of her shirt around her upper left arm, knotted once with her teeth. Lily was in her lap, small and folded and very quiet, with Mr. Biscuit pressed between them. Damien knelt in the straw in front of them. He did not ask what had happened. He did not say anything at all. He put one arm around Savannah and one around Lily and pulled both of them into him at the same time. It was the first time he had held anyone since Evan. Lily, After a moment, whispered into the side of his neck, "Mr. Cross, I know if I hug you, you feel better." "You're right, Bean," he said, and his voice had gone rough in a way she had never heard a grown man's voice go. "You're right about that." Savannah looked up at the rafters of the barn and let the tears come without making a sound. Marcus Vale lay where Anton's shot had put him. Anton, without needing to be told, was already arranging the disposition of the body by the protocols the organization used when it wanted a man to simply stop existing. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep upstairs with the rabbit on the pillow beside her, and the door left open by one careful inch, Damien and Savannah sat on either side of the stone hearth. The fire had burned down to embers. Neither of them moved to build it up again. "This isn't happening again. You don't control everything, Damien." "I know. I control what I can." He laid out the shape of what came next, quietly, the way one lays a plan out on a kitchen table. With Marcus dead, Silas Blackwood had lost the only meaningful intelligence asset he had inside Cross Syndicate. Silas would be forced to move directly now, something he had avoided for 3 years, because direct movement left fingerprints even his lawyers could not scrub. Damien did not intend to wait to be moved against. "How?" she asked. "Cut his financials, his accounts, his cash flow, the whole shell network, all of it. That's my territory." "It is. I'm not asking you. I won't put you on the front." She looked at him across the dying fire. "Damien, I'm only going to say this once. Stop treating me as someone you have to protect. Treat me like a partner." He held her eyes for a long time. "All right, good, because I already have a plan. It's better than yours." She laid it out. No frontal attack. No team of shooters in Milwaukee. Instead, Marcus's confession would become the seed of a dossier. The fingerprint, the logs, Victor Petrescu's taped statement, the entire architecture of Blackwood's involvement in Evan's death, reconstructed and annotated. Routed through a back channel she still had from her bureau years, the package would arrive on 3 FBI desks as an anonymous tip. The Bureau would raid Blackwood Syndicate with no knowledge of its source. Cross Syndicate would not touch the operation, would not take credit, would leave no forensic thread leading back to any Cross asset. But before the Bureau moved, Savannah would be inside the Blackwood banking network, quietly, invisibly, for 60 hours. And at her own chosen moment, she would move 60% of Silas Blackwood's liquid assets, in a single synchronized operation, into anonymous accounts, and then dissolve a substantial portion of that money into cybercrime victim funds and anti-trafficking foundations. Damien stared at her. "You're going to give the money away. I don't need the money. I need Blackwood to fall and stay fallen. Losing cash destroys an organization faster than losing bodies. It kills the one thing bullets can't reach: the confidence of the people beneath him." Damien smiled. A real one. The second she had seen from him. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to this organization, Savannah. I'm the worst thing that's ever happened to Blackwood." A small figure appeared in the hallway, Mr. Biscuit dangling from one hand. "I can't sleep. I had a bad person dream." Damien rose, crossed the room, and lifted Lily as if she weighed nothing. "There are no bad people here. I promise." She dropped her head against his shoulder and yawned into his collar. "You promise now." Savannah watched the two of them from the hearth, the child against the man who an hour ago had cradled them both in a barn, and understood a thing she had been running from for weeks. She was no longer afraid of this life. She had chosen it. The next 3 days were not a war. They were a silence. Savannah worked 14 hours at a stretch, with 2 short breaks she took, only because Damien placed them in front of her: a bowl of soup, a sandwich he had made himself, a glass of water she had to drink in his presence before he would leave the room. He did not interrupt her work. He simply made it impossible for her to forget her body existed. She moved inward through the Blackwood Syndicate layer by layer. Shell banks in Malta, correspondent accounts in Cyprus, a cluster of front companies routed through Panama, a crypto custodian in Luxembourg that existed, on paper, to hold rare metal futures, a brokerage in Miami whose compliance officer had been retired 4 years earlier and never replaced. The hardest part of what she was doing was the part that looked like nothing. For 60 hours, she changed exactly 0 characters of configuration inside any of those systems. She only watched. She only copied. She called it the quiet tremor, the stage in a penetration where even the keystrokes had to be timed so as not to disturb the rhythm of the host. If Blackwood's people saw her, they would harden everything before she had a plan complete enough to break. In parallel, she built the dossier. 340 pages when it was finished. Every Blackwood transaction log she could correlate. 22 months of traffic between Marcus Vale's internal SSH key and a Blackwood-controlled relay in Gary, Indiana. Victor Petrescu's statement. captured on camera by Damien with forensic timestamps, a mapped outline of 4 smuggling corridors, a short, unsparing list of 6 unsolved homicides whose victims had, in one way or another, inconvenienced Silas Blackwood in the 18 months before their deaths. Damien watched her work from the corner armchair. He did not speak. At one point, near midnight on the second day, he set his glass down and said, quietly, to no one in particular, "You're more dangerous than any gun I own." She was typing. She did not look up. I know. On the third morning, her hair had gone past messy into something else. Her eyes were rimmed in a color neither of them named. Damien crossed the room and put a cup of coffee beside her right hand without a word. She looked up. "What do you need?" "Nothing. Just coffee." She glanced at the cup. Black. Unsweetened. A single drop of cream. Exactly the way she took it in the mornings when she did not want to admit she was tired. "You pay attention. I pay attention to everything about you." She did not answer. But when he turned to leave, her left hand came off the keyboard and caught his. She did not kiss him. She did not speak. She simply held his hand. Once, a single long moment, her fingers tight against his palm. He closed his fingers around hers. "When this is over," he said. "When this is over." It was not a promise with a shape yet. It did not need one. By the 4th day, she was ready. Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She pressed return on a keystroke that looked, to anyone who did not know what they were looking at, like nothing. In 47 seconds, $312 million in Blackwood liquid assets moved simultaneously through 180 intermediate accounts. Blackwood's internal accounting ledgers were stripped from their primary servers and replaced with subtly corrupted duplicates, the kind of corruption that would pass a casual audit and fail a real one. Every outbound banking relationship that Blackwood Syndicate held was, quietly and without announcement, severed at the correspondent level. In his office in Milwaukee, Silas Blackwood watched his primary balance run to 0 in real time. He screamed. He hit the desk. He called 6 numbers. No one on the other end of any of those numbers could do anything. The money was already somewhere else. At the same instant, the 340-page dossier landed via an anonymized chain. Savannah had built out of 3 different onion routes in 3 FBI inboxes and with 2 investigative reporters, one at the Chicago Tribune and one at ProPublica. None of them would ever trace the source. At 4:11 the next morning, the Bureau raided 6 Blackwood locations in a coordinated sweep. Silas Blackwood was taken out of his bedroom in handcuffs. No forensic thread led back to Cross Syndicate. Not one. Damien watched the morning news from the kitchen at the farm, with a cup of coffee in his hand. Savannah sat at the end of the counter, drinking hers calmly. Mr. Biscuit propped against the sugar jar for reasons neither of them had asked Lily to explain. "You just destroyed an empire I couldn't touch in 8 years. And you didn't fire a single shot." Savannah did not look up from her coffee. "I told you, the keyboard is stronger than the gun." 2 weeks after the raids, the Blackwood Syndicate no longer existed as a functioning organization. Silas Blackwood had been held without bail. 3 of his lieutenants had flipped inside 48 hours, competing to offer the most useful testimony first. The rest had begun the slow, undignified work of negotiating their own survival with the Bureau. Cross Syndicate, untouched by any of it, had absorbed most of the vacant territory within a month. Damien accepted the expansion without celebration. He used it as cover. He and Savannah returned to Chicago. The Lakeview apartment stayed empty behind them. Damien had signed the lease over to a cleaning service and had his men strip the rooms of anything that carried her scent or her sister's voice. Neither of them would have been able to walk back through that door. The new place was a 3-story townhouse on a quiet block in Lincoln Park, registered to an anonymous LLC that belonged, entirely and in her own name, to Savannah. He walked her through it on the afternoon she took possession. When they reached the front hallway, he placed a single key in her hand. "This is your home, not mine. I don't have a key. You're never going to have one? You'll give me one when you're ready." Lily was enrolled in a small private school 6 blocks away. Thick front doors, a quiet security detail Damien paid for through 3 intermediaries, so the administration believed the funding came from a family foundation. Lily made 3 friends by the end of her first week. By the end of the second, she was teaching all 3 of them how to check whether the classroom lamps had been dusted recently. Savannah opened Rhodes Cyber Solutions in a 6th-floor office suite in River North. Entirely legitimate. Broad client base. Damien held a silent equity stake through a legal trust that did not carry his name, and he did not interfere once, not even on the hiring. Her first hire was Eli Park. He arrived on his first day in a shirt that had been ironed twice and stood in her doorway for a moment before speaking. "Miss Rhodes, I should have pushed back harder when Hutchins gave that restart order. You spoke up. They didn't listen. That's not your fault. I owe you. You don't owe me. You do good work here. That's how you pay me. At the Cross Syndicate, Damien began a slow reshaping of the organization that he had not articulated out loud to anyone but her. He closed the most violent branches, first the enforcement arm that worked collections in the suburbs, the cash courier network that had produced 3 murders in the last calendar year. He pushed the organization's weight toward the legal hotel group, the licensed casinos in 2 other states, and a venture fund that actually, for the first time in Cross history, filed honest quarterly reports. He fired the family members whose instincts he had always excused and no longer would. He was not becoming a good man. Savannah understood that. She did not ask him to. He was becoming a different man. That was enough. On a Saturday in early autumn, he came to the townhouse for dinner the first time at Lily's official invitation, delivered on a folded index card Damien found under the windshield wiper of his car 3 days earlier. Lily took the planning of the evening with the seriousness of a state function. She picked the plates. She placed Mr. Biscuit carefully in the 3rd chair. She informed Savannah that the main course would be lasagna, and that this was not up for discussion. Damien arrived with a box tucked under one arm. Inside, a small recurve bow in real wood, hand-finished by the same craftsman in Wisconsin who had made his father's rifles. Her name was carved into the grip. Lily held it against her chest with both arms. "Mr. Cross, you remembered. I promised I would." After dinner, after Lily had been carried upstairs and tucked in with Mr. Biscuit on the pillow beside her, Savannah and Damien sat on the small balcony that overlooked the Lincoln Park street. The street lamps were the warm kind, the ones they still installed in old neighborhoods to make the buildings look older than they were. "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Taking the contract with me. That first day, I regret falling asleep at the desk. I don't regret taking the contract. And me." She looked at him for a long moment. "No, you aren't what I regret." He reached across the small table and put his hand over hers. There was no kiss. There was no declaration. There was a hand laid over a hand, and a silence neither of them wanted to break, and a beginning that did not require anyone to name it out loud. 3 months later, the city had settled into the kind of quiet that sometimes lies. Savannah had learned, through the bureau years, never to trust a silence that lasted longer than the circumstances required. She was in her office at Rhodes Cyber Solutions on a Thursday morning when the message arrived. It came through an encrypted channel she had shared with exactly 3 people in her life. The sender field was blank. Silas gave one last order before they took him in. "You still have a shadow behind you. Watch the photographer." She read it twice. She saved it. She forwarded it to Damien's private handset without a word of her own attached. Within the hour, he had put his investigators on it. 3 days later, they came back with a name and a face. Ronan Fitzgerald, 34 years old, a contract killer out of Boston who took work only through a particular defense lawyer in Milwaukee. That lawyer had, on Silas's last day of freedom, been signed in to a 40-minute client meeting that was not recorded. Fitzgerald's cover in Chicago was a freelance photography portfolio that looked real to anyone who did not check how long it had been online. The target on the contract was Savannah, not Damien. Silas had calculated, correctly, that taking Damien's woman from him would do more lasting damage than any bullet placed in Damien himself. Fitzgerald had been in Chicago for 3 weeks. He already had photographs of Savannah's morning routine, of Lily's walk to school, of the townhouse from 2 different angles. Damien read the file in the office at the back of the Cross Meridian and stood up with the file still in his hand. "I'm handling this myself." "No, Savannah, not the old way, Damien. You promised. Violence doesn't happen where I can see it. This is your life we're talking about. I know, and I am going to handle it. Give me 72 hours. It hurt him to agree. She could see that it hurt him. He agreed anyway, on one condition: invisible coverage on her and on Lily at every moment of the next 3 days. She had already built the plan on the drive home. By the following morning she had begun, deliberately and visibly, a new habit. A coffee shop in the West Loop, a small place with a street-side window and a predictable flow of traffic. Every weekday at 8:15, same table, same order, same bag, same coat. Ronan Fitzgerald watched for 2 days and planned for the 3rd. On the 3rd morning, the woman at that table was not Savannah Rhodes. She was Special Agent Maya Chen, a bureau friend Savannah had called, quietly, through a channel she had kept warm across 2 years of estrangement. Maya had the same build, the same coat, the same laptop bag on the chair beside her, and a pair of federal colleagues working baristas 1 chair over. She had been sitting there for 32 minutes, reading a report on her phone, when Ronan slipped into the seat across from her and began to raise his right hand from his jacket pocket. He never completed the motion. The bureau recovered everything from the camera bag slung over the back of his chair. Photographs of Savannah, of Lily, of Damien getting out of a car in front of the Cross Meridian. More than enough for a federal charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Fitzgerald, facing a sentence he could still negotiate down, began talking before the transport van reached Dirksen. He gave up the remnants of the Blackwood network. The first raids had missed a cash courier in St. Paul, a laundering pipeline through a dental supply company in Rockford, 3 men in Milwaukee who had been waiting to pick up where Silas had been forced to leave off. A second federal sweep followed within a week. What was left of the Blackwood syndicate went out with it. Damien received the news in his office. Anton was standing at the window with his hands behind his back. "Boss, Miss Rhodes just did something your whole team couldn't do in 10 years, without killing anyone." Damien looked past him, across the gray rooftops of the Loop. "I know. That's why I love her." It was the first time he had said the word aloud. Anton did not react. He only nodded. Once, the way a man acknowledges a fact he had already understood. That evening, Damien walked into the florist on Clark Street and bought every yellow tulip they had, the flower she had mentioned exactly once, weeks earlier, half distracted, while they were cooking together. He had remembered. She opened the door of the townhouse with the kitchen towel still in her hand and saw the flowers. Her face did not ask him a question, which meant she already knew. "I need to say something. Come in." Lily was on the living room carpet with her coloring books and an animated film neither adult had been paying attention to. She looked up. She saw Damien. She saw the tulips. She saw the specific arrangement of his face. She addressed Mr. Biscuit with grave professionalism. "We're going upstairs. The grown-ups need to talk." She gathered her things and went. Damien and Savannah stood in the living room. For a long second he could not find his first word. "Savannah, I don't know how to do this. I've never..." She put a single finger against his mouth. "Don't rehearse. Just say it. I love you. I didn't know what that word meant before you. I'm not going to ask you to say it back. I just needed you to know." Savannah looked at him for a long time. She did not interrupt the looking. Then, quietly, "I love you too, Damien. Probably since that night at the farm. Probably longer." 6 months passed. Spring came to Chicago the way it always did, first as a rumor in the wind off the lake, then as a sudden warming of the stone along Michigan Avenue, then as the first joggers in shorts along the path by the water. Savannah and Damien did not rush anything. They did not move in together. Damien kept the penthouse. Savannah and Lily stayed in the townhouse. But Damien spent 3 nights a week there. He had his own drawer for shirts, his own side of the bathroom counter, a coffee cup in the cupboard with a single small letter D marked on the underside by Lily herself, with a permanent marker Savannah had been looking for since March. Lily had stopped calling him Mr. Cross. He was Uncle Damien now. She had also, after careful consideration, promoted him to the title of Mr. Biscuit's second assistant, which she treated as a permanent appointment that came with responsibilities she periodically reviewed. On a Saturday morning in April, the 3 of them made pancakes. Lily had been promoted to head chef under close supervision. Flour was everywhere that flour should not have been. "Lily," Damien said, "what do you want to do today?" "I want to go to the zoo, and I want you to take a picture of me riding the llama." "Done." "You don't ride llamas, little bean." Uncle Damien said I could. "I said picture," Damien clarified gently, "not ride." Lily considered this with the seriousness of a treaty negotiator. Accepted. Savannah laughed into her coffee. "You're learning. You're a good teacher." At the Cross Syndicate, Damien had nearly finished the long, patient work of pulling his organization toward the light. 78% of revenue now came from legitimate sources. The remainder moved through licensed high-stakes gambling operations in 2 neighboring states, legal in their jurisdictions and clean on paper. He had tracked down the widows of 3 men who had died in the violence of the old days and had arranged, through a private foundation, restorations that were not called restitution in any document but that everyone understood were exactly that. He had not become a good man. He would not claim that word. But he was no longer the man he had been, and that distance mattered. Savannah saw it. She accepted it. She did not ask for more than that. At Rhodes Cyber Solutions, the staff had grown to 18. The client list included 3 major banks and a quiet federal agency. Her firm had been named in a trade publication. Neither of them had expected to notice her. One of the top 50 cybersecurity companies in the Midwest. She had been invited to give a guest lecture at the Kellogg School at Northwestern on the ethics of incident disclosure. One afternoon, at the coffee shop she still used as her thinking office, she took a call from a number she did not recognize. "Miss Rhodes." This is Special Agent Harper McKinnon, FBI Chicago Field Office. Her shoulders came up a fraction before she could stop them. Agent McKinnon, we know who you are. We know, informally, what you've done. We are not interested in investigating you. We'd like to offer you a part-time consulting position, case-by-case basis, paid, fully above board. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll think about it. You have my number. She ended the call and sat looking out at the street. The offer was not a threat. It was recognition. She would not go back to the bureau as an agent, but helping, now and then. From the outside, that was something she could consider. That night, she told Damien about it on the balcony. Do you want to do it? Part of me does. Part of me is afraid. Which part is bigger? I don't know yet, but I'm glad I was asked. Whatever you decide. I'm here. I know. They sat together on the small balcony. Lily was asleep upstairs. Mr. Biscuit was sprawled on the armchair with one ear folded under him. The Chicago sky held all of the city's lights and not a single star, but it was the sky they had chosen. Dear viewers, if this story has moved you this far, please take a moment to consider what it is really saying. Sometimes the most important person in a room is the one no one is noticing. Sometimes a single judgment made in 3 seconds can cost us something it takes years to rebuild. And sometimes the courage to apologize, to listen, to begin again, is a greater kind of strength than any anger we have ever carried. This story is about second chances. It is about the people who hold our lives together quietly, without asking to be seen. It is about the difference between power and authority, between speed and wisdom, between a family you are born into and a family you choose. If any part of this touched your heart, please press the like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the stories we bring you every day. We read every comment, so tell us, what part of Savannah, Damien, or little Lily reminded you of someone in your own life? Have you ever been the person no one listened to? Or the person who learned, too late, that you should have listened? Your story matters to us. Write it in the comments, and we will read it. Finally, wherever you are watching from, we wish you good health, peaceful days, and a heart that stays open to the people around you. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video.